The first time I encountered adventure games would be in junior high by proxy, because my friends would play computer games and I'd hear about them and they'd tell me about. Much later, I found out that they were talking about the snake in the can in Enchanter. About like there was a puzzle you had. There was a way to fight off the troll or something, and someone tried opening the can and it worked, and there were several different ways of doing it, and they thought that was pretty cool. So yeah, that was back in junior high. I read a little bit about a little short transcript from Games Magazine about the leather goddesses of Phobos. I actually played my own adventure games probably in high school. I think I played a Zork or two. Didn't finish it, but played around with it and solved some of the puzzles. On one vacation, I was at a cousin's house, and he had The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. We played that in the evenings until late, and he had one of the... I don't remember if he had the Invisi-Clue book or not. Probably not. I think we were just trying to... Yeah, we just tried to figure out how to solve all the puzzles on our own, basically, without any of the hints. One of the puzzles I solved because it had... The verb was listed in the possible verbs in the back of the manual. So I thought, well, maybe if that verb is listed, that means we should try it somewhere, and maybe it'll solve this puzzle. And it did. And we were all very happy about that. Late 96, I was thinking about it and did a search on the net for XYZZY or Infocom or something, and I've found the modern game Curses and Inform and the authoring system Inform, and played Curses, and it was sort of fun to sort of revisit that scenario, to revisit the text adventure games, and I found out about a little after that. I found out about the Lost Treasures collection. Played some of those again. Found the news group, started reading those, and found that there were lots of people writing new games, which was interesting. And then and from that, I thought, well, maybe I should write my own game. I remember someone had came up with an adventure writing game system in BASIC that I had vaguely sketched out the idea for an adventure game. This would have been back in probably high school. I had some ideas that it would be in an underwater cavern or something, and a research station or something. Research stations are very common. Anyway, so the Inform was actually enabled me to actually write an adventure where the basic thing was just more work than I could really handle. So after I downloaded Inform, I went through the little example game, typed in some of those, started doing my own things for that. I played some of the 1996 IF Comp games, which was fun, and wrote a game basically that would sort of as a front end for the competition. There was some debate on the news groups about whether you should play all the games or only play a subset of them, and if you only had to play a subset of them, it would be best if you played them in a random order. So this was just a little game that would randomize the list of games so you could play them in a random order for you. So I wrote that, basically got my feet wet in the authoring system, and then was able to code my own game, which I did in 1997, called The Edifice, which was sort of the discovery of different technologies and things from sort of an early hominid or early man scenario. So you had to discover fire, and you discovered how to ride a horse. And the favorite puzzle that everyone liked was the language puzzle, which is you come across someone else and you need something and they don't speak your language, so you have to sort of talk with them, use their words, and come to an understanding, and finally be able to express, I need this thing, in this foreign language that you've slowly built up an idea of what it is.
And it won.
And it won, yes. Much to my surprise, but yeah, that was exciting. I was on the IF Mud at the time, and was able to get some feedback beforehand from people that liked it, which was gratifying. It's always gratifying to hear that people like your stuff. First of all, just because it was a fun, creative endeavor. I enjoyed being able to put it out there, to have people enjoy it. And also, I had enjoyed programming in the little bits and drabs that I had been able to find. I had taken like 1 or 2 classes. This was been in grad school at this point in biochemistry. And around that time was when I realized that I did enjoy programming more than I thought I would beforehand. So this was a good way to sort of get my feet wet in a real programming project. I had to do the whole thing myself: the design, implement, code, write out everything, and it ended up being time well spent, because about 7 years later, I was moved back to Seattle, was looking for a job here, and I was hoping to get a job programming. And I found a postdoc position in a lab that was run by a woman who was also into IF. Her name was Mary Kuhner. And she had actually, back in '97, written a review of my game that was favorable. So I sent in my application and then sent her an email and said, "I think I know you from the news group. You even wrote a review of my game once," and I sent a little link to it. So when she was looking up stuff that I had done, she was like, "Okay." I wrote a little article about what it had taken to code the language puzzle in the Edifice, and so she thought, "Okay, this guy can program. He can understands the basics." And for the last 3 years now, I've been working in her lab as a programmer. So being handed a tool was a big part of that, I would say. Being given Inform and say, this is a tool to write a game, and I was interested in programming, and this is a tool that uses programming, and I could say it seemed within my grasp, and it seemed the sort of interesting thing that I could do. But it all seemed very intuitive. But after going through a few chapters, writing up Ruins, which is the example game, writing up then doing my completely own thing, the front end for the competition, I felt I had enough tools under my belt to do something else. And I don't remember specifically what the inspiration for Edifice was, but the idea of these other games, where you would discover something in human history, it seemed like an easy thing to do. It's like, here, let's have the player discover fire. Let's have them discover language, discover how to ride horses, and maybe even agriculture. I had some ideas that didn't make it into the final game of different discoveries in history that would be fun to replay. So there should always be something for the player to do. Whether it's, and traditionally that's solving puzzles. It could be exploring the landscape. It could be finding out something the author has to say about something. But the player needs to be needs to be given control of something and told to go at it. And in Photopia, what happens is that the player is tricked. The player is told a little bit, you can go out and do these things, but then all of their capacity to handle anything is taken away from them, and this tragedy occurs. The girl dies as a result of a tragic car accident. And there's nothing that the player can do about it. And after I finished playing the game and realized what had happened, I replayed the game trying to do something about it. And of course, there's nothing to do. And I replayed it again, And I realized that at the very beginning of the game, you start off and you're a passenger in a car, and this is the car that's destined to crash into the other car and kill the girl. But you can demand to be let out of the car and left on the side of the road, and the car speeds off without you and goes off on its date with destiny. But you weren't there. You didn't have to do it yourself. And that was the only thing I got out of Photopia that I could actually had control over, and it let me do it, actually. And there's actually another part in the game later on where you hear a snippet of conversation in the hospital. And the line drunk frat boys shows up. And when I replayed the game all the way up to that part again, just so that they wouldn't say drunk frat boys, but they would say drunk frat boy, because I wasn't in the car. There was only one guy left. And it actually, I played it, and I was all excited to get rid of that S, and it was still there, and I was so disappointed, and I sent it in as a bug report. It's like, if I get out of the car, that S should be gone. That's my contribution to the story, is to delete an S from one word. So.
Did he respond to this?
I didn't hear back from that particular bug report, no, but I didn't really expect him to. And I actually haven't played it in the more recent versions to see if it actually does disappear. I should do that to check.
I suppose he would have made it. His response would have been to make it so you can't leave.
No, I think you actually could. Being able to get out of the car is definitely something that it was a clear intent. You could do that. That's one of the things that's possible to do. So, and you could. So what I did in my own head was since all you hear is drunk frat boys, then the unheard context is then what I could change in the story in my head. Was someone no longer is saying drunk frat boys crashed into the car, but they are saying, oh, it must have been one of those drunk frat boys or something like that. But it wasn't me. I didn't do it. There are other games that make you do it anyway. That it turns out in the end that you're a criminal, and those are generally kind of boring. They're not all that exciting to me. It's a big revelation, but it's this revelation again. It's okay to wake up in your bedroom. It's not the end of the world to wake up in your bedroom. It's not the end of the world to have amnesia. I mean, Zarf, Andrew Plotkin, made a career of taking and subverting genres and winning awards for them. It's like the game, the Hunter in Darkness, is in the cave, and that's the very first game was in a cave. There's all sorts of games in the cave, but he did it well. He won a puzzle. He won best puzzle for a maze. Mazes have been around since early on, and everyone hates them. And he wrote a maze and won best puzzle for it. So you can surmount those problems. But it does help if you know what's happened before, know the literature, as it were, and are ready to do something else with it, and we're ready to put your own stamp on it. So you don't have to be new, you don't have to be surprising, you have to bring something new to the table, and that could be expanding the bounds of IF, but that's not necessary, and it's not... And boundary-pushing games are not necessarily going to be the best games. They lay groundwork for the best games, I would say, but are not necessarily going to be the best themselves. In first-person shooters, they say that Doom was the first of its type, but the thing that really brought it home was something else, which of course now I don't remember. But so the first game that tries something new is likely to do it badly because no one's done it before. So coming back to something and doing it well is always a possibility, and improving on it. I would have never guessed that you could improve on the maze puzzle, but Andrew did it. He actually did something unique with it. There's a new game called The Baron from last year that tries to do new things, and I didn't really appreciate it as a game, but it's interesting that it's pushing new boundaries, and I'm interested in future games that sort of take that approach because I think there's plenty of area that's ripe to have good games written in them. If I was writing games, I haven't written a game in 10 years. If I was writing a new one, it's hard to say if I would want to try to market it widely or no. I like having the people that I know play my games, which doesn't happen all that often. It's nice to know people now that will play a game that I come out with. But it's certainly when I wrote it, not lots of people. I didn't know the people that were playing it in general, and most of the people that I knew are not the type of people who would play the game or be able to sort of figure it out. I actually did send it to an old high school friend, and the same person in junior high who was telling me about interactive fiction games. Sent it to her. She sent some good bug reports back. Another friend from college who was also sort of on the same wavelength. But yeah, as far as the wider world, it's nice to find new people who will appreciate your work, but I'm not looking for them. And I'm not against that happening, but I don't have any personal stake in it. The most surprising reaction was someone who didn't like it because it promoted evolution, which it's not actually about. I mean, it's sort of about early human development, but this was someone who was not in favor of the theory of evolution and didn't really like the game because he thought that it promoted that. So that would be the most surprising thing that happened, I guess. That's probably the biggest barrier to IF is figuring out how to get everything to play. I've played, when I first found out about modern IF in 1996, I figured out how to play Inform games, and I didn't figure out how to play TADS games, and I wrote my game in Inform, and I'd never played any TADS games, and I think 3 or 4 years later, I finally was like, okay, I'll figure out how to play these other games, and I did, and they were fine, obviously, but yeah, the barrier to entry is figuring out how to get it to run, let alone anything else. And there's been a lot of work on that front. Well, I guess there could have been a lot more work on that front, but for the advocates, that's the biggest. I would say that's the single biggest thing that they need to work on is the. I actually talked with Brian Moriarty once at a game developers conference, and he said that he and everyone else at Infocom never really solved the problem of someone sitting down at a keyboard. They see a prompt, they type something, and hit enter, and the game doesn't understand them because IF vocabulary is actually very limited. You can't understand anything, and so they try to expand things, but apart from understanding all of natural language, all of English, you can't do it. You can't solve the problem of someone sitting down and typing something, and now what?
Right.
And that was always sort of frustrating for him. There's one where you play God, form Earth, consecrate it, and it was. That was one of the sort of extra things in the Lost Treasures of Infocom. They have sample transcripts from games that they never actually made, and I think the God game was one of them.